reading an excerpt from Lord of the Flies, Chapter 1. Isn't there a ship, then? Inside the floating cloak, he was tall, thin, and bony, and his hair was red beneath the black cap. His face was crumpled and freckled, and ugly without silliness. Out of this face stared two light blue eyes, frustrated now and turning, or ready to turn, to anger. "Isn't there a man here?" Ralph spoke to his back. "No, having a meeting. Come and join in." The group of cloaked boys began to scatter from close line. The tall boy shouted at them, "Choir, stand still!" Warily obedient, the choir huddled into line and stood there swaying in the sun. Nonetheless, some began to protest faintly. "But Mary-do, please Mary-do, can't we?" Then one of the boys flopped on his face in the sand and the line broke up. They heaved the fallen boy to the platform and let him lie. Mary-do, his eyes staring, made the best of a bad job. "All right then, sit down, let him alone." "But Mary-do." "Oh, he's always throwing a fight," said Mary-do. "He didn't give an Addison and Mattins over the precentor." This last piece of shot brought snickers from the choir, who perched like black birds on the crisscross trunks and examined Ralph with interest. Piggy asked no names. He was intimidated by this uniform superiority and the offhand authority in Meridu's voice. He shrank to the other side of Ralph and busied himself with his glasses. Meridu turned to Ralph. "Aren't there any grown-ups?" "No." Meridu sat down on a trunk and looked around the circle. "Then we'll have to look after ourselves." Secure on the other side of Ralph, Piggy spoke timidly. "Well, that's why Ralph made a meeting, so as we can decide what to do. We've heard the names. That's Johnny. Those two, they're twins, Sam and Eric. Which is Eric? You? No, you're Sam." "I'm Sam." "No, I'm Eric." "We better all have names," said Ralph, "so I'm Ralph." "We got most names," said Piggy. "We got them just now." "Kids' names," says Meridu. "Why should I be Jack? I'm Meridu." Ralph turned to him quickly. This was the voice of one who knew his own mind. "Then," went on Piggy, "that boy, I forget." "You're talking too much," said Jack Meridu. "Shut up, fatty!" Laughter arose. "He's not fatty," cried Ralph. "His real name is Piggy." "Piggy? Piggy? Oh, Piggy!" A storm of laughter arose. Even the tiniest child joined in. From the moment the boys were a closed circuit of sympathy with Piggy outside, he went very pink, bowed his head, and cleaned his glasses again. Finally, the laughter died away and the naming continued. There was Maurice, next in size among the choir boys to Jack, but broad and grinning all the time. There was a slight furtive boy who no one knew, who kept to himself with an inner intensity of avoidance and secrecy. He muttered that his name was Roger and was silent again. Bill, Robert, Harold, Henry, the choir boy who had fainted sat up against a palm trunk, smiled pallidly at Ralph, and said that his name was Simon. Jack spoke. "We've got to decide about being rescued." There was a buzz. One of the small boys, Henry, said that he wanted to go home. "Shut up," said Ralph absently. He lifted the conch. "Seems to me we ought to have a chief to decide things." "A chief? A chief?" "I ought to be chief," said Jack with simple arrogance, "because I'm chapter chorister and head boy. I can sing C sharp." Another buzz. "Well then," said Jack, and he hesitated. The dark boy Roger stirred at last and spoke up. "Let's have a vote then." "Yes, vote for chief, let's vote." This toy of voting was almost as pleasing as the conch. Jack started to protest, but the clamor changed from the general wish for a chief to an election by a claim of Ralph himself. None of the boys could have found good reason for this. What intelligence had been shown was traceable to Piggy, while the most obvious leader was Jack. But there was a stillness about Ralph as he sat that marked him out. There was his size and attractive appearance, and most obscurely yet most powerfully, there was the conch. The being that had blown that had sat waiting for them on the platform, with the delicate thing balanced on his knees, was set apart. "Him with the shell! Ralph! Ralph! I don't be chief with the trumpet thing!" And Ralph raised a hand for silence. "All right, who wants Jack for chief then?" With dreary obedience, the choir raised their hands. "Oi, and who wants me?" And every hand outside the choir except Piggy's was raised immediately. Then Piggy too raised his hand grudgingly into the air, and Ralph counted. "I'm chief then." The circle of boys broke into applause. Even the choir applauded, and the freckles on Jack's face disappeared under a blush of mortification. He started up, then changed his mind and sat down again while the air rang. Ralph looked at him, eager to offer something.
Choir belongs to you, of course.
They could be the army, or hunters. They could be... And the suffusion drained away from Jack's face. The three boys walked briskly on the sand. The tide was low, and there was a strip of weed-strewn beach that was almost as firm as a road. A kind of glamour was spread over them, and the scene and they were conscious of the glamour and made happy by it. They turned to each other, laughing excitedly, talking, not listening. The air was bright. Ralph, faced by the task of translating all this into an explanation, stood on his head and fell over. When they had done laughing, Simon stroked Ralph's arm shyly, and they had to laugh again.
Come on, said Jack presently. We're explorers.